Okay, let's unpack this. For, what, nearly a century, Western thought really perfected this engine of rational inquiry. The Enlightenment.
Right. Order, objective truth, applying universal reason systematically.
Yeah.
That was the goal.
But then, what happens when that relentless logic, turns inward, and suddenly the age of reason is producing, well, the guillotine?
Yeah, it's the ultimate betrayal, isn't it, of that whole Enlightenment promise.
How so?
Well, you have the French Revolution. Initially, it's all about the rational pursuit of liberty, but then it descends, really quite quickly, into the reign of terror. Just chaos, bloodshed.
And they're using that same cold logic for mass murder.
Exactly. Systems of reason applied to killing. And that just cracks the whole cultural foundation. That period, roughly, let's say, 1785 to 1832, that's when Western civilization basically looked at pure, unfettered rationality and, well, declared a state of emergency.
And we call that state of emergency the Romantic period.
Yeah.
Which I think for a lot of people conjures up these images of, soft focus. Fluffy clouds, maybe?
Yeah, the daffodils and clouds view.
But the sources we're diving into today, they paint it as anything but gentle. This wasn't just some shift in literary taste.
No, absolutely not. It was foundational. A cultural, psychological revolt. The revolt of the heart, you could call it, against that mechanistic philosophy, that obsession with cold, measurable order from the Enlightenment.
So this deep dive, then, is really about tracing the philosophical DNA of our modern self, the introspective one, the often anxious one.
That's a great way to put it. It's exploring why things like feeling, authenticity, personal vision, even despair, why they suddenly became prioritized over, verifiable facts or just fitting in.
They started valuing the unquantifiable.
Precisely. The Romantics taught us to value what you can't necessarily measure or systematize.
And the real benefit for you listening is connecting these huge historical shifts directly to your life right now. This knowledge, it gives you the philosophical architecture for so much today.
Oh, definitely. Everything from ethics, debates around AI and biotech, to why environmentalism often feels spiritual, not just practical.
And even the structure of celebrity, influencer culture.
Absolutely. It all loops back. You can't really grasp the architecture of our private emotional lives today without understanding this romantic revolution.
Okay, so let's start with the chaos, the upheaval that sort of necessitated this shift.
Yeah, to really get the intensity of the romantic reaction, you have to ground it in the relentless instability of the time.
It felt like everything was shaking.
It really did.
Yeah.
And it opens, as we mentioned, with that massive political shockwave, the French Revolution, 1789.
And at first, everyone was thrilled, right? Enlightenment thinkers, English poets, they saw it as the ultimate win for reason.
Oh, ecstatic. This was supposed to be it.
Yeah.
Liberty, equality, fraternity, all systematically engineered into this perfect society.
But then, the terror. Robespierre's Committee of Public Safety, using hyper-rational legal arguments to execute thousands.
And that just shattered the faith. Reason itself, the supposed god of the Enlightenment, had shown it could be monstrously cruel. The disillusionment was immediate. It was profound.
So that revolutionary energy, it couldn't stay political anymore. It had to turn inward.
Exactly. It became too dangerous externally. So the revolution sought was now within the self, within the individual consciousness.
And on top of that political chaos, you've got almost 2 decades of war.
Continent-wide conflict. The Napoleonic Wars dragged on until 1815. And that had a huge impact back in Britain.
How so?
Well, it really solidified this intense surveillance state. Fear of French spies, Jacobin sympathizers. But paradoxically, all that conflict also fueled this fierce, sometimes quite aggressive nationalism.
Interesting. So war creates both repression and national pride.
Right. And poets, thinkers, they start merging the idea of the sublime, that wild, powerful landscape, with a heroic spirit of the nation itself.
Okay, and this tension, this political and emotional pressure cooker, that gives us the key literary moment, the year zero, as some call it.
1798, Wordsworth and Coleridge published lyrical ballads.
But it wasn't just the poems themselves, was it? It was the preface.
The preface was the manifesto, a direct shot across the bow. It demanded a shift away from that old aristocratic formality, the poetic diction.
Towards what?
Towards poetry written in the real language of men, focusing squarely on common life, intense feeling, and finding the profound in the ordinary. That was radical.
Wow, okay. But political and literary crises, that's only half the picture.
Only half. Because happening at the exact same time, you've got the seismic disruption of the Industrial Revolution. It just accelerating wildly.
Think dark satanic mills.
That's Blake, yeah. The Romantics reacted, often violently, against that relentless grind of urbanization, the slums, the frightening mechanization of life, of human labor.
And that changes how they saw nature. It wasn't just pretty scenery anymore.
Not at all. The Enlightenment liked nature controlled, manicured gardens, resources to be managed rationally.
But the Romantic...
For them, nature becomes a spiritual refuge, an untainted moral standard against the ugliness, the soullessness of industrial progress. It was the place the soul could recover from the machine.
That's a powerful shift.
And to really grasp how deep that social change went, we need to look at some things that often get overlooked, like the Enclosure Acts.
Right. These weren't sudden, were they? This was a long process.
Ongoing, over the 18th and 19th centuries, quietly but ruthlessly privatizing common lands, fencing off resources communities had shared for generations.
So it wasn't just about property lines, it was mechanizing the landscape itself and community life.
Exactly. You see this fueling Wordsworth's politics of place, his deep lament for this vanishing, shared rural life, which he saw as tied to a higher morality.
It shows they weren't just running away to the countryside. They were responding to radical economic change.
Absolutely. And this systemic pressure, this squeezing of traditional life, it eventually explodes into direct conflict. The Luddites.
The machine breakers, 1811 to 1816, roughly.
Around then, yes. And this wasn't just random vandalism, it was desperate. A visible human protest against the systems, the efficient, rational systems that were destroying their livelihoods, mechanizing them.
They saw the threat, a system built for pure productivity, regardless of the human cost.
They absolutely did. And the state's response?
Repression, brutal repression, Peterloo Massacre, 1819.
The defining moment, perhaps. Cavalry charging peaceful pro-democracy protesters, killing them. It was horrifying proof that the state, built on those Enlightenment ideas of order, would use rationalized force to silence dissent.
And Shelley's response, The Mask of Anarchy, that comes directly out of Peterloo.
Directly inspired by it. He completely reframes the narrative, turns state violence into this call for powerful, dignified, nonviolent mass protest, telling the people, ye are many, they are few. It's an incredible piece of political poetry.
It's vital, though, as the sources point out, to remember another side to this search for intensity. Something maybe darker, chemically aided.
We have to mention laudanum, yeah. Opium mixed in alcohol.
And this was legal, common.
Completely legal, widely used, primarily as a painkiller. But its effects went much deeper. It profoundly shaped the visionary experiences, the melancholy, the altered states described by writers like Coleridge, De Quincey.
So the search for intense, non-rational experience wasn't just philosophical. It was literally woven into their daily lives, their bodies.
Absolutely. You frame it historically, you see an era that was chemically, politically, psychologically just primed for this radical dive into the inner world, a quest that pure reason just couldn't satisfy.
Okay, so we've got the backdrop. Political betrayal, industrial chaos, even chemical help for looking inward. If the Enlightenment put reason on a pedestal, the Romantics basically said, what? Reason's useful, but not the boss.
Pretty much. Reason became just a tool. A necessary one, sure, for counting things, building systems. But too cold, too limited, maybe even too dangerous to be the sole guide to truth.
So what did they elevate instead?
This is the core shift. They consciously elevated imagination, affect, which is really just emotion, intuition, and this concept of the sublime. All things that reason tends to dismiss or distrust.
And emotion wasn't just noise anymore, not irrational impulse.
No, it became data, vital data, a profound way of knowing the world, of relating to it. Your feelings meant something fundamental.
And that leads straight to the sublime, a word we throw around now to mean great or awesome, but for them, it was often terrifying, wasn't it? Standing before the Alps or in a massive storm.
Terrifying, yes, but also thrilling. The sublime is this complex aesthetic experience. It's pleasure mixed with fear or awe, usually triggered by something overwhelmingly vast, powerful, or terrifying in nature.
Like looking into the abyss, but feeling alive because of it.
Something like that. Edmund Burke, who was a huge influence, called it delight in terror. The feeling that your physical self is momentarily threatened, but because you're just safe enough to contemplate it, you get this intense self-awareness.
So it's definitely not just a nice view. It's seeking out something that makes you feel small, that shakes your foundations.
Precisely. It's a deliberate quest for terrifying awe. And Immanuel Kant took it further, linking the sublime to moral elevation. He suggested that encountering physical immensity allows us to grasp the superiority of our own mind, our spirit. over mere physical limits. It forces you to confront the infinite, whether that's God, the cosmos, or the infinite potential of your own consciousness. It's that feeling right at the edge of understanding.
Wow. Okay. And that focus on consciousness, on the mind's power, brings us to the absolute centerpiece, imagination, especially Coleridge's take on it.
Coleridge was trying to figure out what made human creation different from just mechanical copying. He came up with two types of imagination. First, primary imagination.
Okay, what's that?
That's the basic fundamental power of perception we all have.
Yeah.
How we take the raw chaos of sensory input and organize it into a coherent reality. It's the bedrock of consciousness itself.
So everyone has that, but the artist uses secondary imagination. What's the magic there?
Right, secondary imagination is the conscious poetic power.
Yeah.
Coleridge famously said it dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate. It doesn't just see the world. It takes bits and pieces of reality, melts them down in the mind, and fuses them into something new, unified, visionary. It's the difference between describing a sunset and writing a poem that changes how someone feels about sunsets forever.
Ah, okay, so that's what establishes the artist as this visionary genius figure.
Exactly. No longer just a skilled craftsman imitating reality like the neoclassical ideal. Now, the artist accesses deeper truths, actively transforms the world through their imagination. The poet becomes the lamp lighting the world, not just the mirror reflecting it.
That's a huge shift in status.
Massive. And speaking of psychological insights, maybe the most enduring one from this era comes from John Keats. Negative capability.
Negative capability. It
Yeah.
sounds counterintuitive, like something from modern therapy or maybe business strategy.
Doesn't it? And it's incredibly relevant today. Keats defined it as the ability to tolerate uncertainty, mystery, doubt, without, as he put it, any irritable reaching after fact and reason.
So in a world obsessed with categorizing everything, putting it in neat enlightenment boxes, Keats says the truly mature mind can just sit with the mess, hold contradictions without freaking out.
Precisely. It's profoundly anti-enlightenment in that way. Recognizing that the deepest truths might be paradoxical, that you don't always need immediate answers.
And you're saying this is used today in creativity training, leadership.
Absolutely. Tolerance of ambiguity is a core concept now. It shows just how deeply Romanticism shaped our very understanding of psychological maturity, of intellectual humility, being okay with not knowing everything.
Okay, so philosophy shifts from reason to imagination, and that sparks a psychological revolution, right? If you elevate feelings, intuition, that changes what it means to be a good or valuable person.
Completely changes it, right? Affect emotion becomes a form of knowledge, and the era starts to legitimize this whole spectrum of intense feelings, melancholy, awe, deep yearning, even despair. They weren't seen as weaknesses, but as valid, even superior ways of knowing the world.
And that leads to the cult of sensibility. That sounds a little traumatic.
It was dramatic. And potentially dangerous, too. It's essentially the belief that a superior soul has a superior capacity both to suffer and to experience ecstasy.
So if you feel things more intensely, if you're more emotionally volatile, maybe more sensitive to beauty or injustice, you're somehow deeper, more profound.
That's the core idea. It shifts status away from birth or wealth towards sheer emotional intensity. It's about the quality of your inner life.
Which means the self isn't this fixed thing anymore, like the Enlightenment might have seen it.
No, the self becomes a project, a narrative, a developmental journey constantly unfolding. Think of Wordsworth's huge autobiographical poem, The Prelude, that's all about the growth of the poet's mind.
It's not a fixed essence, it's a story you're living.
Exactly, where the Enlightenment valued universal reason the same for everyone. Romanticism championed the idiosyncratic imagination. What makes you unique? What makes you different? What drives your passions?
So Descartes' I think, therefore I am gets replaced by...
Implicitly, yeah. It becomes I feel, therefore I am. Your feelings validate your existence, your importance.
And sociologically, this gives the artist a whole new role, a much bigger one.
Immense power, almost revolutionary. The poet goes from being a craftsman working for a patron to this untaught genius, a cultural prophet.
Shelley called the poet the unacknowledged legislator of the world. That's quite a claim.
It is. The belief was that the artist, through their visionary depth, could guide society's moral and spiritual compass, often by deliberately standing outside or against conventional norms. They might be marginal figures, but they believed their inner world held the blueprint for a better future.
But ironically, this visionary role was amplified by the very commercial forces they often criticized, like the rise of mass readership.
Absolutely. Cheaper printing, circulating libraries, magazines. Suddenly there were huge new audiences hungry for these stories of intense feeling, individual struggle, visionary insight.
And this created counterpublics. What does that mean?
It means you had spaces, often in print, where dissenting ideas could circulate outside of official control. Radical presses pushing boundaries often met with immediate, harsh government crackdowns.
So it's this constant tension, this dance between dissent and control, as the sources put it.
Exactly, which sounds very familiar, doesn't it? It basically defines modern struggles over free speech and political voice.
And we absolutely have to mention the women writers who were actually huge players in this new mass market, even if they're sometimes forgotten, like Felicia Hemans or L.E.L.
Letitia Elizabeth Landon.
Yeah.
Yes. L.E.L. She was incredibly popular. She and Hemans often outsold the big male poets like Wordsworth or Byron.
Really? What were they writing about?
Often tapping into that heightened feeling, melancholy, domestic sorrow, themes that resonated hugely with the reading public, especially women readers. It shows the market was complex.
So while the Byronic hero was the big male archetype,
The market was eagerly consuming these female voices of sensibility. It shows authorship itself, the connection with readers, was being forged through this shared emotional landscape. The emotional economy wasn't just a boys' club.
Okay, let's move from the theory and look at some concrete examples. The actual cultural artifacts, this revolution, created things that still resonate with our anxieties today. And we have to start in the lab. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 1818.
Absolutely. Frankenstein, it's the ultimate romantic novel, I think. Though often misunderstood as just horror.
It's really a bioethics text, isn't it? A critique.
Fundamentally, it critiques that unchecked scientific ambition, that purely rational pursuit when it's divorced from empathy, from care. Victor Frankenstein is the Enlightenment rationalist gone wrong.
He achieves the impossible through sheer intellect, but fails completely on the emotional, moral level.
And his failure isn't making the creature. The novel is crystal clear on this. The core warning is about abandonment. Victor creates life, then recoils in horror and rejects his creation.
And the creature becomes this embodiment of neglected emotion.
Exactly. The creature is pure romantic subject, driven by intense loneliness, despair, rage, the desperate need for connection, feelings Victor refuses to acknowledge or take responsibility for. The monster is created by the failure of empathy.
Which is why it feels so incredibly relevant now. Debates about AI, biotech, what creators owe their creations.
We're still working within the framework Shelley built. What happens when you create something powerful, intelligent, maybe even sentient, but fail to consider its well-being, its emotional needs, your responsibility to it?
That question, responsibility, starts at the design stage, comes straight from Frankenstein.
Directly. Okay, now let's pivot. From the lab to, well, the global stage of celebrity, the Byronic hero.
Lord Byron. The archetype. Proud, brooding, magnetic, morally gray, alienated.
And Byron didn't just write this type, he lived it. Or at least he crafted that persona brilliantly. Mad, bad, and dangerous to know. It became a global brand.
This is the birth of the influencer dynamic, isn't it? The scandal, the transgression, the suffering. It's all part of the appeal.
Absolutely. The scandal is the brand. He showed that moral ambiguity, combined with genius and charisma, could generate immense cultural power. Huge fascination.
But Byron wasn't just posing, was he? The sources emphasize he put his money and his life where his mouth was.
He really did. He took that celebrity, that wealth, and threw himself into the fight for Greek independence in the 1820s. He wasn't just writing poems about liberty, he was bankrolling a revolution.
And dying for it in Missolonghi.
Which instantly transformed him from scandalous poet to martyr for freedom. It cemented that archetype. The charismatic rebel whose suffering and defiance grant them almost saint-like status, a template we still see today with rock stars, activists.
The charisma of transgression. Okay, one more case study, this time visual. J.M.W. Turner's painting, The Fighting Temeraire from 1839.
Oh, such a powerful image. You have the Temeraire, this grand old battleship, a hero of the Napoleonic Wars, looking almost ghostly, majestic but fading.
And it's being towed by what?
By this small, dirty, functional steam tugboat, belching smoke. The new industrial age literally dragging away the old heroic age to be scrapped.
It's heartbreaking in a way.
It is. It's a visual lament. It captures that core romantic anxiety perfectly. The feeling of spiritual loss, of dehumanization, as the noble feeling past is replaced by this efficient, mechanical, rational, and frankly ugly future. The machine is towing away the soul. #tag5. controversies, ambivalence, and critical lenses.
We really need to clear up some common myths about the Romantics because the sources show they were way more complex, often much more politically plugged in than just dreamy escapists.
That's crucial. Myth number 1, Romanticism equals romance, like love stories.
Right, when it's really about
Imagination, nature as a force, the self, individuality. Love might be in there, but it's not the main event.
Okay. Myth number 2, they were all just running off to the Lake District to write about clouds and avoid reality.
Yeah, the nature escapist stereotype. When you look at figures like Shelley, Byron, they were fiercely political.
Frontline reporters, almost, on the birth pains of modernity, tackling repression, state violence, injustice head-on in their work.
Exactly. They didn't run away. They just shifted the battleground, often into the realm of imagination and consciousness.
But that political engagement, it wasn't simple, was it? The movement seems really ambivalent politically.
Hugely ambivalent. It's not easily boxed as left or right. It fuels both sides. You have the radical celebration of liberty, the autonomous individual, think Shelley again.
But you also get reactionary politics.
Absolutely. Look at the later Wordsworth, after he got disillusioned. Or someone like Edmund Burke, who's often seen as a precursor. They champion tradition, custom, seeing them as essential, non-rational anchors needed to prevent the chaos of pure individualism, the kind unleashed by the French Revolution.
So the rejection of pure reason could lead to anarchy or to extreme conservatism?
Precisely. It depends what you put in reason's place, individual feeling or collective tradition. And we also have to confront the blind spots. Modern scholarship is very clear on this.
Oh, like what?
Well, that celebration of liberty often existed right alongside really problematic things like Orientalist fantasies.
Okay, explain Orientalism in this context. It wasn't just studying the East, was it?
No, not academic study. It was more of an aesthetic practice. Exoticizing, romanticizing, often simplifying and stereotyping Eastern cultures, turning them into a kind of aesthetic fuel, a backdrop for the Western imagination's adventures.
Using other cultures as decoration, basically.
Pretty much. Scholars like Edward Said, Sari Makdisi, they argued that the British Empire wasn't just a backdrop to Romanticism, it was almost a co-author. That longing for the authentic or primitive often involved ignoring the complex realities, the power dynamics of colonialism. There were also definite blind spots around class and gender power, too.
So this internal tension, the high ideals versus the sometimes messy or problematic reality that fuels the big scholarly debates, like M.H. Abrams versus Jerome McGann.
That's the crux of it. Abrams, in his famous book The Mirror and the Lamp, gives us the mainstream view. That romantic poetry marks a fundamental shift. Art stops being a mirror, reflecting objective reality,
And becomes
a lamp, emanating light from the poet's own inner consciousness, their imagination. Imagination replaces God or classical models as the source of truth and creativity.
Okay, that makes sense. But then McGann comes along with the romantic ideology and offers a critique.
A very powerful one. McGann basically argues that those lofty romantic ideals, the focus on the autonomous imagination, the retreat to supposedly timeless nature, weren't transcendent at all.
What were they then?
He sees them as a kind of reactionary deflection, a way of compensating for or escaping from the immediate, brutal political and industrial horrors happening right then, like Peterloo, like mass poverty.
So the beautiful nature poem exists because of the societal ugliness it's trying to ignore.
That's McGann's challenge. Read the history in the lyric. He forces us to see the social context embedded even in the most seemingly personal or nature-focused poems. It's a much more critical, historicized reading. #6. Cultural variations and global echoes. And it's really important to remember this wasn't just a British thing. Romanticism was truly transnational. The core ideas, imagination, emotion, nature, they popped up and were adapted all over the world.
Like in Germany, German Romanticism, the Früh Romantic, sounds like it was maybe even more philosophical.
It often was, yeah. More overtly philosophical and spiritual. Thinkers like Shelley, the writers around the Jena Circle, they were intensely focused on art's infinite task, the role of irony, the inner journey, the Bildungsroman, the novel of personal formation really comes out of that.
And it got tied up with national identity, the Volksgeist.
Deeply connected, fusing German landscape, folklore, myths, into this idea of a unique national spirit. The soul of the nation reflected in its forests and mountains. That was a powerful and sometimes later dangerous idea.
Which contrasts pretty sharply with the American version, right? Transcendentalism, Emerson, Thoreau.
Very different flavor. They kept the sublime nature, the individual genius themes, but gave it all this distinctively American, optimistic, democratic spin.
Less melancholy, more self-reliance.
Exactly. They believed divinity, truth, could be accessed directly through nature and individual intuition. Emerson's oversoul, bypassing old institutions, churches, governments. It's the bedrock of American individualism, really. That sense that you can connect to the ultimate truth all by yourself, out in the woods.
Fascinating. Still romantic DNA, but a different expression, and it went even further afield.
Oh, yes. By the early 19th century, you see romantic literary forms being picked up and actively adapted in places like Latin America, South Asia, often for very different purposes.
Like what?
For anti-colonial struggles, for nation-building projects, fusing that passionate individual lyric voice with the destiny of the nation. Think of Poland's great poet Adam Mickiewicz using Romanticism to give voice to a stateless nation, to forge cultural identity as a form of resistance. It shows how potent that focus on deep feeling could be, politically.
Okay, so pulling this all together. When we look back at the Romantic legacy, it's a real mixed bag, isn't it? We need to balance the amazing contributions against the inherent risks, the things we still wrestle with.
Absolutely. It's crucial to see both sides. On the strength side, that revolution in understanding our inner lives is undeniable.
Elevating emotion, memory, intuition, not just as feelings, but as actual tools, cognitive tools.
Yes, as fundamental ways of engaging with and evaluating the world. That's a massive contribution to how we understand ourselves.
And the ethical foundations it laid, especially regarding nature.
Vital. The seeds of modern ecology are right there. That idea of the non-instrumental worth of nature, valuing it for itself, not just for what we can extract from it. Wordsworth's deep connection to his local Cumbrian ecology is a direct ancestor of the national parks movement, of environmental ethics.
Plus, it opened up art, didn't it? Democratized the subject matter.
Definitely. By championing the real language of men, focusing on ordinary lives, rustic speech, wild landscapes, it made those legitimate subjects for high art. It broke down some of the old aristocratic or academic exclusivity.
Okay, but then the weaknesses, the dangers, which seem pretty profound too, starting with solipsism, getting lost in your own feelings.
That's a major risk. The cult of genius, the intense focus on individual feeling, it could easily slide into excusing harmful behavior as just being authentic or true to myself. If my feelings are the ultimate authority, who are you to judge my actions? That's the danger.
And that focus on intense feeling, can it lead to rejecting facts? Anti-intellectualism.
It absolutely can. If sincerely felt emotion become the highest value, you risk creating a climate where verifiable facts matter less than how strongly someone feels something. What we now call a post-truth environment has deep roots in this romantic prioritizing of subjective conviction over objective evidence.
A very contemporary anxiety.
Extremely. And of course, the danger we touched on earlier, exoticization, turning other people, other cultures into just aesthetic fuel for your own emotional or imaginative needs. Orientalism is the key example there.
Okay, so if we boil it down to the core ambivalences, the tensions we're still living with today, what stands out?
Two big ones, I think, that really define our current moment. First, tech versus human scale.
This goes right back to the Luddites and the Mills, doesn't it?
Right back. It's the enduring romantic worry that our systems, whether it's the spinning Jenny back then or generative AI today, will inevitably outgrow empathy. That logic, efficiency, scale will always end up crushing the unique, messy, individual human needs.
Are we building things that don't care about us?
That's the fear. And the second big tension is the authenticity economy.
How so?
The Romantics demanded genuine self-expression, authentic feeling. But what happens when authenticity itself becomes the ultimate commodity? When realness, vulnerability, intense feeling are things you cultivate and sell in the marketplace, like on social media?
Can you truly be authentic when authenticity is what you're performing for clicks?
That's the paradox. It's a purely romantic dilemma playing out on a massive, technologically amplified scale today.
So this deep dive isn't just history. It really gives us tools, a kind of pedagogy for navigating our world right now. Mental health, tech, media.
Absolutely. Take environmentalism and wellness. Wordsworth talking about wise passiveness, connecting deeply to a local place, the humility you feel before the sublime, that directly anticipates modern ecoethics.
And the focus on solitude, walking, nature immersion.
It tracks perfectly with contemporary mental health advice, doesn't it? The romantic search for grounding, for solace in nature, is exactly what we're often told to do now to counter stress and digital overload.
And media literacy. You mentioned the Byronic hero and influencers.
Right, the modern rock star, the controversial influencer. That figure who gains status through perceived emotional depth, rebellion, maybe even suffering. That's a direct descendant. It's a pure romantic construct.
So we need to teach people to see that, to deconstruct it.
Yes. We need media literacy that understands this history. charisma isn't credibility, that intense passion or vulnerability you see online. It might be genuine, but it's often also a highly cultivated part of a brand, designed to tap into that very romantic longing for authenticity that we all still feel.
And using these texts, like Frankenstein, in surprising places, like product design.
Why not? Tease Frankenstein in tech companies. The core message is incredibly relevant. Responsibility doesn't start after you launch the product or the AI. It starts at the prototype. You owe moral consideration to what you create before it goes out into the world.
Wow, think about the implications of that.
And finally, back to Keats, negative capability. That's not just literary theory, it's a practical skill.
How could we use it?
We could define, uncertainty labs, exercises for leaders, students, doctors, challenges that force them to sit with ambiguity, complexity, contradictions without jumping to easy, premature answers. It's teaching the profound skill of making peace with not knowing so you can actually think more clearly in complex situations. #outro. At the end of the day, the Romantic period remains so significant because it really is our modern origin story, in a way.
How do you mean?
Well, you could say the Enlightenment built the big rational institutions of our public life, our science, our economics, our systems of government.
Okay.
But Romanticism, it built the architecture of our private lives, our sense of self, our valuation of emotion, our search for meaning, our spiritual connection or disconnection from nature.
We need both then, the cold, hard reason for civilization to function.
That's the Enlightenment legacy, yes. We can't live without it.
But we also need the empathy, the intuition, the spirit for the soul to thrive.
That's the essential Romantic legacy. And maybe its most urgent warning.
Which is?
That creation without care breeds monsters. Whether they're stitched together in a lab or coated in silicon, that immense power, whether intellectual or technological, must be paired with profound responsibility, with empathy.
So the central dilemma for us now in the 21st century, it's still the same one they face.
I think it is. How do we reconcile our romantic hearts with our Enlightenment minds? How do we be passionate, committed, deeply feeling human beings?
While also being clear-eyed, rational, critical thinkers. How do we harness the power of the storm, the passion, the intensity, without being destroyed by it?
That's it. That remains the task. Maybe the lifelong task.